Om Ayahi Varade Devi Traksare Brahmavadini Gayatri Chandasang Mata Brahmajani Namastute. Om Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrittar Ma Amritangamaya Aviravir Maedhi Rudra Jakte Dakshinamukham Tenamang Pahi Nityam Tenamang Pahi Nityam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Divine Mother of the Universe, reveal Thyself in our heart and in our midst. We invoke Thy presence amidst us. Thou art the supreme word of the Scriptures. Thou art the embodiment of knowledge and liberation. Thou art the supreme bridge to immortality. Lead us from unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death, disease and suffering to immortality. Manifest Thyself in us through and through, and protect us with Thy compassionate face. Om Peace, peace be unto us, peace be unto all living beings. Our subject this morning is the methods of concentration, part 2. We discussed the part 1, the group of practices. We intend to discuss the part 2 group. I'll read in the beginning some words of Holy Mother Sarada Devi in that context. A disciple had written, I cannot calm my mind and concentrate, and so on. Mother became agitated at these words and said, it can be done if one repeats the name 15 or 20,000 times each day. I have seen it actually happen. Let him do that first and talk afterwards if it fails. One must put one's mind to it. But no one will do that. They only complain, why does nothing come out of it? The conjunction of day and night is the most auspicious time for calling on God. The mind remains pure at this time. True it is that there is no hard and fast rule about the time of prayer or repeating God's name. Yet morning and evening are the favorable periods. Whatever the time be, you must do japa every day. It is not good to forgo it any day. One should practice japa or meditation at regular times, giving up idleness. While living at Dakshineshwar, I used to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and practice japa and meditation. One day I felt a little indisposed and left the bed rather late. Next day I woke up still late. Gradually I found that I did not feel inclined to get up early at all. Then I said to myself, at last I have fallen a victim to idleness. Thereupon I began to force myself to get up early. Gradually I got back my former habit. In such matters one should keep up the practice with unyielding resolution. Disciple, I practice japa, but I cannot concentrate my mind. Mother, repeat the name of God, whether your mind is concentrated or not. It will be good for you if you can repeat the name of God for a fixed number of times daily. Disciple, Mother, shall I practice the repetition of the holy name having in mind a fixed number? Mother, if you repeat with an eye to the number, your mind will be concentrated on the number alone. Therefore, I would advise you to repeat the name of God without being particular about the number. Repeating the name of God a fixed number of times, telling the rosary, counting on fingers, is calculated to direct the mind to God. The natural tendency of the mind is to run this way or that way. Through these means, it is attracted to God. While repeating the name of God, if one sees His form and becomes absorbed in Him, one's japa stops. One gets everything when one succeeds in meditation. While performing japa, take the name of God with utmost love, sincerity and self-surrender. Before commencing your daily meditation, first think of your utter helplessness in this world, and then slowly begin and practice sadhana as directed by your Guru. One should meditate on one's chosen ideal as one goes on making japa. In meditation, the face of the chosen ideal, deity, of course, comes first. But one should meditate on the whole figure, starting from the feet upwards. A disciple, why is it that our mind is not absorbed in God when we repeat His name? Mother, it will come about in due course. Even if the mind is not concentrated, do not give up the repetition of the holy word. You do your duty. While repeating the name, the mind will get fixed of itself on the ideal like a candle flame in a place protected from the wind. It is the wind that makes the flame flicker. In the same way, our fancies and desires make our mind restless. Disciple, Mother, why is it that the mind does not become steady? When I try to think of God, I find the mind drawn towards other objects. Mother, it is wrong if the mind is drawn towards secular objects. By secular objects is meant money, family, etc. But it is natural to think of the work in which one is engaged. If meditation is not possible, do japa. Realization will come through japa. If the meditative mood comes, well and good, but by no means do it by force. Disciple, is it of any use to be merely repeating His holy name without intense devotion? Mother, whether you jump into water or are pushed into it, your cloth will get drenched. Is it not so? Meditate every day as your mind is yet immature. Constant meditation will make the mind one-pointed. Discriminate always between the real and the unreal. Whenever you find your mind drawn to any object, think of its transitoriness, and thus try to withdraw the mind back to the thought of God. A man was angling, a bridal party going along the road with the music. But the angler's eye remained fixed on the float. The mind of a spiritual aspirant should be steadfast like that. The mind is by nature restless. Therefore, at the outset, to make it steady, one may practice meditation by regulating breathing a little. That helps to steady the mind. But one must not overdo it. That hits the brain. You may talk of the vision of God or of meditation, but remember, the mind is everything. One gets everything when the mind becomes steady. These are few words of practical significance. We described the first group of practices: posture, time, place, physical condition, eating habit, dress, and so forth. These are called external practices to engage the mind. Also, to invoke a mood for the practice, of prayer, contemplations, and so forth. As I have said earlier, the goal is to invoke the mind at your will, not your doing at the will of the mind. Everybody, in some matter or other, feels concentrated, but not at the person's own time. Our goal is to bring it at our will, our time, and consciously. Concentration, when becomes very steady, then the state of meditation begins. Two examples are given. What sort of concentration makes for meditation? A heron looked toward a fish in a lake, and with slow steps it was proceeding to catch the fish. It was totally absorbed. Meanwhile, a hunter was aiming an arrow toward the heron. A wandering holy man passing by, he saw this condition, that this heron is going to die immediately. But such is his absorption, he completely became oblivious of that condition. Second one, just now, Holy Mother read. A man was angling. His mind was on the float. It was bobbing up and down. A bridal party, marriage procession, passed along the way. This is something in India, when they go to marry with a big party, with a band and everything. You can imagine, I believe from half a mile one can hear those things. But the angler, oblivious, he did not hear, he did not see. Third, Swami Vivekananda in Thousand Island Park. Last day, went toward the rock, alone, sitting. A heavy shower came. Completely became wet and drenched, but oblivious. When some of the devotees who came to know and went with the umbrella, after a long time he came back to his outer consciousness. He said, "Oh, I thought once more I was in Calcutta." Think of the situation. You may say, are these extraordinary? Can they be for me? I would say yes. If these had not been possible for us, there was no hope. There is no need of reading, practicing, listening. Mind can be totally absorbed. Another instance, we all read newspapers, perhaps. One of Ramakrishna's disciples, in the early days, he was reading his newspaper. Meanwhile, the luncheon time came, and in any of our centers anywhere, they ring a bell. Even when you are the only person in the whole center, you must ring the bell and sit down as a matter of discipline. Several rings were given. Still, Swami didn't come. Then a novice monk, he came and affectionately and reverentially said, "Sir, the bell is on." No answer. Finally he came and, holding him, nudged him. He looked at him. He said, "Well, how many minds you have?" He said, "Sir, one." "So I also have one mind. I was reading newspaper. How can I hear your bell?" Now this is that it is said that when you do one thing, you do that thing. The Zen people say that when you eat, you eat. When you talk, you talk. When you drive, you drive. The first group of practices we spoke, they are external. External practices, they help withdraw, disconnect the switch. But merely withdrawing is risky unless you have kept the other switch ready. Mind, forcibly controlled, mechanically done, has a tendency to rebel. Also, by switching it off and not switching it on, if you leave a gap, that's the most dangerous time. Hence come the internal practices. Internal practices major are three in number. Pranayama, or control of breath. Japa, repetition of a sacred prayer or a word or concentrated prayer. And mystic worship. Let us say first pranayama. About that much has been read by all and also probably many practiced. If you ask my personal opinion, I do not have any bias. I never saw anybody who says he's exclusively practicing pranayama and I have seen any mark of tranquility in the person's face. Often we read, we go to retreats, we go to places. Anybody and everybody is asked to do pranayama. It is an ancient practice. One of the texts, authoritative text, it says, called Yoga-Vasishta Ramayana. It deals with these methods. That there are basically 4 ways to invoke concentration. First is holy company. A person who is holy, to be near that person, to hear his word, it gives an external detachment, at the same time a concentrating subject. If that fails, next is discrimination, which is method of persuasion. Mind is remarkably susceptible to any kind of suggestion. We are constantly giving suggestions to us. When a person is unable to give suggestion, he is in difficulty and danger. Suggestion is to summon the will power and the faith. So this is nothing new. Persuasion is, we need to persuade the mind to voluntarily to withdraw. Often Bhagavad Gita says, to tell the mind its dangers and difficulties of the other way. To remind it of the transitoriness of worldly pursuit. You may say, well, will the mind listen? It will listen. You continually drop the ideas. That if you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will happen. Often by going to holy company also you hear these things. It has a remarkable effect. The words of a truly holy man has a power. What he says, and if he practices, you cannot ignore it. You may rebel against it, you may criticize it, but you will have to listen to it. This is the method of persuasion. It is being called second best method. We have to remember, we need the cooperation of the mind. Mind is like your horse or your automobile. By being angry with it, you cannot break it. If you damage the mind, you'll have to live with a damaged mind all your life. So you cannot damage it. You cannot make it angry. It will take revenge upon you. You cannot ill-treat it. Ill-treat does not mean that you will not tell what is right or do what is right. Often we think to treat the mind well means pamper it. In fact, that is ill-treating. Method of persuasion is directed more from the point of view of discriminatory intellect. In three ways we work: intellect, emotion, action. Some people think first, then feel, then act. Some people act first, then feel and think. They are always apologetic. Oh, I should have done it. I should not have done this. Always. Some people feel first, then think. But good condition would be think first, then feel, then act. Depending upon the person's nature. Emotionally oriented persons, they feel first. In spiritual matters, those people prosper quick. It has been said that generally the women folk are guided more by heart. It's a traditional saying that between men and women folk progress quicker in spiritual matters. They succeed easier. But emotions were not what you call guided by discriminatory intellect, can be blind. Those who are intellect oriented, that means those who think first. Persuasion is a great weapon. You persuade. If that fails, Adhyatma Vidya Samagama being said, worship, which is pacification or spiritualization. Some form of devotional practices where you keep your sense organs occupied, not to give the mind any scope which is not occupied. It has been said the idle mind is the devil's workshop. It is very true. In India, if you build a temple, you make the walls and everything, then you come to the altar. When you make the altar, you quickly install the image or symbol, whatever you want to put. Do not keep the altar empty long, because devil will occupy it. So therefore, quickly place God. This has, those who are emotionally oriented, for them this is good. Often you will find a difficulty. Many people say, I like to think of God as all-pervading spirit. But the same person cannot fix his mind on a form. You cannot think of the formless unless you have established on form. You can never do it. It will be an intellectual jugglery. It is said that there are 3 steps in the practice of dhyana or meditation. First is rupa dhyana. Rupa is a form. Rupa is called also assumed form. Assumed means how you make yourself appear in a certain way. This is the form. When you are established on it, then comes gunodhan, qualities. Means God is all-pervading, endowed with auspicious qualities, but He does not have any particular form. Even He may be Father, we may call Him Mother, but He does not have a particular picture. The third, when you are established on the second, third comes Swarupodhyan, which is non-dualistic. Swarupa means real nature. Real nature is different from the other two. Real nature is constant all the time, where God is by Himself or herself. He appears sometimes Himself, He, she, it, but what it is real nature? We don't know. That is called Swarupa, all-pervading spirit, where God alone exists. All the other things which we see and feel, they really don't exist. They exist like hallucination. So the three steps being said. Then again, in practice, first is formal prayer. Formality is observed to invoke the will. Then comes concentrated prayer. Maybe a sentence, maybe a word, maybe a syllable. Then comes silence. That is highly concentrated thinking. There is no word there. So Dhatma Vidya means some form of worship, which we will consider under the heading mystic worship. When all these fail, then confrontation. Pranayama is the last measure to be taken, not as a first. Because there are many dangers. It is like, there is a story, Christmas story, in one of the big departmental stores. I read that in the newspaper, but I won't mention the name of the departmental store because that may, make feel biased. But newspapers publish that. During the Christmas season, they hire Santa Clauses to attract customers. So the children will come, sit on Santa's lap, he will ask him, what do you want? And the parents are standing. These are all business techniques. A family came and they had a boy. The boy was in the toy store making racket. Now the departmental stores not only hire Santa Clauses, security men, but also that time a psychiatrist, often more than one. Often I thought why they do that. But they do that varieties way. A madman may come, a sick man may come. How to convince and get him out? If you create a situation, then all the customers will leave. So a psychiatrist upon his team. So this boy, unable to fix his mind on which toy he will buy, he was about 7. So each he was taking and making a racket there. Finally he came on a horse and he was riding the horse from one end of the float to the other, bumping against other customers. The salesmen came, salesgirls came to convince him, to cajole him, but he was somebody who would not listen to anybody. It was a big chaos. Manager came, tried to bribe him, give him a gift, but he would not. Finally, they commissioned the resident psychiatrist. He came. He was doing racket. He went to he put his hand on his shoulder and whispered something. And a magical effect. He stopped, came out of the horse. Everybody said, psychiatrist, that you must know some miracle. Do you know a mantra or some magic or hypnosis? He said, no. He said, what did you say? He said, I told him that if you do further, I'll break your teeth. I'll take the stuff out of you. And immediately, this is called confrontation. So first you employ the others. Pacification, sublimation, spiritualization. Then comes confrontation. Why these warning notes are there? Because this is a practice which is so often misunderstood. It is applying force to the mind. The basic idea is when the mind is distracted, agitated, or dull, it has its effect on our breathing. Breath is the flywheel of the system. You will find that breath is not even on the two nostrils. Rarely. Either one side is clogged or other side is open. Depending upon which side is blocked, it can be said either the person's thoughts are on a gross level. If one side is blocked, then obvious conclusion, the mind is thinking of very gross sensual things in a very low level. If the other side is blocked, mind is in a state of drunkenness. Too many desires, agitation. Here also, I don't intend to tell you which side means what. Because you will obviously check and get depressed or when the two are even, mind is tranquil. You will find in every day, all of a sudden, for no reason, mind is in a very high state. Even you are trying to bring it down, it is hard. Other times you are trying hard, it is not happening. So the breath is being the effect. Or physical habits, walking, eating, talking, volume of the conversation, dialogue, responses. They indicate these are effects of the agitated or distracted mind. By maneuvering the effects, we can reach the cause. That is the basic theory. Since we don't know the cause, we have to find out the cause. Because sometimes you do not know. And it is going all the time, rotating. No mind is all the time on the gross plane. Then we will not be human beings. At the same time, all the time it is not on tranquil plane. Human characteristics is, it is experiencing the two. Sometimes we are siding with the body. Body is pulling the mind from one direction. Soul is pulling the mind from another direction. Individually, the person is siding with the body's demands, soul's demands. It is being pushed and pulled. That is the situation. Pranayama is being said that if I can control the breathing, which is the effect, I can get hold over the mind. When it is tranquil, it has an upward movement. You'll find a person sitting, stooping low, bent back. When you are depressed, we do that. When you are energized, we sit straight. So therefore, controlling the effect, control the cause. Which is causing that thing? Practice comes. There are so many practices of this pranayama. Not all are dangerous. Inhalation, exhalation is continuous, called in-breathing and out-breathing. As an individual doing, the whole universe is doing it. That is being called, creation is the breath of Brahman. One breathing out, the whole creation. One breathing in, dissolution, end of time. Because it is a universal form, one breath means maybe billions of years. Slowly inhaling, it will take several billion years. Breathing in, breathing out. In the same proportion, all creatures are breathing. Going to the lower level, the quicker the breath, shorter the life. It is said the turtle lives about 300 years. It breathes about 10 to 12 times a minute. So therefore, shorter the breath, quicker the duration of life. So this is not any peculiar to any individual. The universe is breathing. Breathing in, breathing out. There is a third condition which is separating the inhalation from exhalation. That is being called pranayama, real practice in spiritual matters. Upon it is practiced, slow, long, deep breath, prolongation. Because when the mind gets agitated, breath becomes quick. Breath can be hard, breathing heavily. A dying man breathes heavily. You can hear. Normal person, you cannot hear the breath. A good, healthy mind means its breath will not go beyond 10 fingers if you put this distance. And if you keep a barley powder on your hand and you breathe, it will not go away. It will not be blown. Like a silken thread. But there are some who are breathing like a trailer truck engine. You can see that. So therefore, breath is a system. So when slowing down by breathing slow, you are applying some external pressure to do it. Second is, you separate the inhalation from exhalation by duration, which is being called kumbhaka, suspension of breath. In deep absorption, this thing happens. No matter if you read a book, absorbed program in the television, mind is reached the state of kumbhaka. Hold your breath that time. In spiritual matters, when you do in a very regulated way, mind becomes calm. So rechaka, puraka, kumbhaka. Inhalation, suspension, and exhalation. When the chain is separated by a gap, that is the most serious practice. Until then, it is not serious. It purifies the nerve. Pranayama raises the mind up from the lower centers up to the heart. Invariably, the agitation will stop. But for how long? Mind has a tendency to go down. So artificially pushing it up, it does not remain there at that state. When you push the mind, there must be somebody on the upper floor to pull you. Because you cannot push yourself too long. In the inward journey, in the first stage, you push, make effort. Reach a second area, which is a gray area. You feel both push and pull. There is a third area where you do not push. There is no gray zone. You are all the time being pulled upward. That is a very advanced stage. Mind is up. It will not come down. That is being called pulled from above. You have crossed the zone of the mind. And you reached a third area where mind is up. These are the movements of the mind. First, it is quicker waves, lot of up and down. You will find an average mind likes rock and roll music, which is a quick rhythm, invariably. They do not like classical music much, because in order to enjoy music, you have to concentrate between the 2 meters and 2 pauses. That requires strength of mind. One pause may come after maybe 10 seconds, but here it is happening, what you call 10 times in 1 second. This is average mind is heavily influenced by these things. It brings the mind down. Then comes a long rhythm. Similarly, mind moves in a wavelength which is very short wave. Then comes the long wave. At a stretch, your mind may be next 5 years, long, steady. All of a sudden, it may find a pocket, air pocket. It is like a flight. And you can headlong come down, unless you are careful. All of a sudden, crash. But in the beginning, from shorter to medium length to long length of waves, the duration of the mind remaining in the upper level longer and longer. But still, it can fall. So long you are in the gray area. Gray area is being described between the fourth center, which is the heart, and the fifth, which is the throat. When you reach the sixth, which is the forehead, then only cross the barrier of the mind. Or faint flow of mind is there, but not able to overcome. So pranayama is a method where these are done. And it is achieved. Question comes here. Does mechanical practice of pranayama help? We are told, many systems, many teachers, they teach, irrespective to anybody. Swami Vivekananda words, so also all the great teachers. It is playing with fire. When you rouse the mind, you must keep it rousing up. Swami Vivekananda says, it is like a playing with a cobra. Cobra is sleeping. Now you want to have the cobra, suppose in the cellar, cobra is sleeping. And you have a rain pipe going up. You put the cobra inside. You have to keep the cobra going up. Otherwise cobra is going to come down. So, to raise the mind by mechanical minds a little is extremely dangerous. Mind raised until you can take it up to the sixth center, it is a very dangerous thing. Because when it falls down with a big reaction. A person even can lose interest in spiritual matters for whole life out of the reaction. Because whimsically he is doing it. Then he will blame. We are often impatient. Many people in modern day, they don't have patience. Everything quick. We'll be wanting to have it by, in a mechanical way. But you get that which you get in a cheap way, you get the cheap thing also. That is a story. A reporter was interviewing a war veteran. And how did you win this Distinguished Service Cross, sir? He was having a Distinguished Cross, the veteran. Well, I saved the lives of my entire regiment. Reporter, wonderful. But how did you do it, sir? Do that. Veteran, I shot the cook. Obviously, the cook was cooking such bad meal, the whole regiment would have died. He said, I shot the cook. Winning the Distinguished Cross in that way will not help. You have to win that, but winning the battle. So the pranayama, mechanical practice, it is a condition. That condition comes in a natural way. By imitating others, if we practice, it will not be we are trying to then create artificial hunger. Hunger is a normal thing. But when you don't feel hungry and create artificial hunger, that is unhealthy. So it is. When it is not a spiritual practice, practicing pranayama for peace of mind, for health, invariably these have serious reactions. Swami Vivekananda says, he may contract an incurable disease. He can have a derangement of brain. Those who are established in considerable amount of purity, continence, live alone, pure air, exclusively practicing meditation and contemplation, for them it is good. Otherwise, it is fraught with danger. Confrontation always has that. You can damage yourself instead of winning its favor. But this is one of the methods. Often it is given a mixture with other practices. We are talking here as a system of practice, not necessarily as an individual practice. It is like this medicine has this reaction, this reaction, this reaction, these are a plus. Now who will take that medicine and how much, that depends on the individual prescription. Allied to this is called piercing through the 6 lotuses. Now before that, on the pranayama, I would like to add that pranayama, when it is not spiritual, it can be a mechanical and it can create more danger. Shankaracharya comments upon that. Both posture and pranayama. In his Aparokshanubhuti, one should know that to be real posture in which meditation of Brahman flows spontaneously and unceasingly, and not any other that destroys one's happiness. This is the posture which he talked last Sunday. People say, shall I sit this way? Shall my knees will remain this many inches high or low? This is Shankaracharya says, flow of Brahman. That is posture. Anything that destroys your happiness, if you suppose trying to sit in a posture which is very painful, that will keep your mind on the body. You will be meditating on the knees, not on God. Goal is to release the mind. That which is well known as the origin of all beings, support of the whole universe, which is immutable and in which the enlightened are completely merged, that alone is known as Siddhasana, which is one of the posture for meditation. One should direct one's vision. Sometimes direct your vision to the tip of the nose, or these descriptions are there to invoke the mind. One should direct one's vision to that alone where all distinction of sheer sight and the seen ceases, and not just on the tip of the nose. You will find in the Bhagavad Gita, Nasagre, that when you meditate, keep your mind fixed on the tip of the nose. Goal is not to meditate on the tip of the nose, but by that you bring the mind into the heart. The restraint of the modifications of the mind by regarding all mental states as Brahman is called pranayama. The negation of the phenomenal world is known as breathing out. A thought, I am verily Brahman, is called puraka, breathing in. And the steadiness of that thought thereafter is called kumbhaka, suspension of the breath. This is the real course of pranayama for the enlightened, whereas the ignorant only torture their nose. Shankaracharya comments. The ignorant who misses the goal, he is only torturing his nose. Shankaracharya here maintains that the breath is entirely dependent on the mind, so that instead of frittering away one's energy in the attempt of restraining the breath, one should always try to control the mind. The absorption of the mind in the supreme consciousness by realizing that the Atman is all objects known as pratyahara. That means here, Shankaracharya is telling, pranayama by itself has no value unless it has a spiritual content. Simultaneously, if he is breathing in, he should breathe in purity. Breathe out that which is dross. If it is not there, it is purely mechanical. Piercing the 6 centers. This is one of the practices of Tantra, a method of meditation. Also a method employed to invoke the mind. I told you there are 6 centers. A person visualizes each lotus or center and pierces through to reach the top. A practice from one center to the other once, instead of only on one center focusing. This is a method used by the Tantra. The centers are known as lotuses, with each a different number of petals. Different petals are subtle nerve channels. It is the number and configuration that gives rise to the image of the lotus with a particular number of petals. In the human body, the following centers are in an ascending order. First, the number at the root of the spine called Muladhara, lotus, of 4 petals. It presides over the matter in gross and physical state. Psychologically, it governs purely our physical subconscient movements and impulses. Sadhisthana, lotus of 6 petals, at the level of the organ of generation, presides over the water state of matter. It governs the lower vital being, its desires and petty movements. Third is lotus of 10 petals, Manipura at the level of the navel, presides over fire state of the matter. It governs the larger vital, the expansive movements of life being. Fourth, Anahata of 12 petals at the level of the heart, presides over the air state of matter. It governs the emotional being. Vishuddha, lotus of 6 petals at the throat level, presides over the ethereal state of matter and governs the expressive and externalizing mind. Agga, lotus of 2 petals between the 2 eyebrows, presides over the mind proper. And finally, lotus of 1,000 petals at the crown of the head, the highest center of manifestation of consciousness. It governs the higher reaches of our thinking mind and its illumined heights bordering on intuition. Now think of that, a person can think in his spinal, it's like a light fixture, it has 6 lights. So he imagines the first light, he visualizes the exact number of petals. Then from there, the next, like a barometer going up. Then it reaches the crown. In this way, he does several times. This is one of the practices. Mind gets a support to raise the mind from one level to the other. The third is being said, mystic worship, which you are familiar with. Symbols, rituals, they are used to invoke the mind. First, to break the connection. It is like you come back from your job. You enter your house. But generally, we bring all the people of the place of work. Why? They all come in the form of thoughts. How do you keep those people out? Your friends, your critics, your boss, your competitors, they're all entering your mind, your apartment. So you, like ceremonial bathing, you want to be different. Often, you give a suggestion. You make a particular mark around you. That is the meaning of having a special prayer room or a temple. Observances. Mystic worship, it has various formats and rituals. It gives the mind a support. You sit in this way, then you think in this way, called formal worship. You give some suggestions. You place on your body varieties of symbols, what you call psychologically. Often it is said, as soon as he sits, he purifies his seat. But by sending a prayer to the earth would be favorable. The various directions, the presiding spirit of the house, the place, the town, the country. There is a living element in everything. You need the favorable condition. So therefore, you must offer adoration and worship to all the elements. Then your body inside. There is a saying in the Upanishad that dhatu prasadat. You can concentrate when the dhatu means metal in your body, that tranquil. If the metals are not in balance, it will create havoc. So you pacify everybody. This is the meaning. You pacify them by spiritualizing, telling them and emphasizing their spiritual content. You will find the commonly practiced. I'll give you one example. The first he sits, that this is my seat. Then he thinks that he is sitting. His seat is in the midst of a circle of fire or a rectangle of fire. Anything from outside cannot enter there. Often, this is the experiences one of concentration. As soon as you sit down, one of Ramakrishna's disciples used to feel immediately thick fog will surround him. A wall of fog around. You are there. So these are suggesting fire, offering prayer to the presiding elements of nature, then placing the various holy spirits on your body. Now you are grounded. External worship, offering of light, candle, flower, these are only suggestive. In this mystic worship, first you do the mental worship. Your heart is the altar. You worship there with flower, incense, whatever. Then you come to the external. What you did inside, you repeat that in the external worship. After you finish the external, you again put it back inside your heart. This is the methodology of Vedanta. That you are repeating a mental process by externalizing it. If you carefully see the sacred words and methodology, you will see there. And the Tantra says that a mental worship, what he does after purifying the seat, the directions, then he begins the mental worship. Hritpaddam asanam daddat sahasraro chitamritoi. The lotus of the heart should be offered as the seat for the divine. The nectar that follows from the 1,000-petal lotus on the head should be offered for washing the feet. The mind should be offered as offering. Above nectar should be offered for rinsing the mouth. The principle of ether, akasha, should be offered as clothing. The heart should be offered as flower. Live breath as incense. Principle of fire as light. Ocean of nectar as food offering. Principle of sound as bell. Flowers of various species should be offered to attain one's real state. These are absence of deceit, absence of egotism, absence of desire, delusion, vanity, hate, excitement, jealousy, avarice. These are called 10 flowers. Non-violence is the best flower. Control of senses is another. Then there are flowers of compassion, forgiveness, knowledge. These are 5 other flowers. One should worship with these 15 flowers of the form of mental attitude. The sky is to be offered as a mirror, together with the fan and the umbrella. So what do you see? That a lighted candle, a flower, incense, these are very, secondary form of worship. Actually, anybody can buy few flowers. But to buy these 15 flowers, it costs. Forgiveness, compassion, actually you have to give these flowers. You are giving mind. Giving the bits and pieces of mind to the world, we become bankrupt. It is said that when somebody is angry, that he gives a bit of his mind. In the same way, instead of giving the bits to the world, you give a bit to the God. Actually, you are offering bits and pieces of mind graduated way. So mystic worship means it is symbolic. One cannot avoid rituals. We are ritualistic beings. We have mannerisms, habits. By observing the rituals, you overcome them. They become natural for you. In fact, telling beads and rosaries They come after you have established yourself in a formal worship. We sometimes think whimsicality is freedom. There is a beautiful story. There was a man standing at the bus station and there was a bystander. The man said to the bystander, "Just look at that young person with the short hair and the blue jeans. Is it a boy or a girl?" Just he was making a conversation. Bystander, "It is a girl. She is my daughter." The man, "Oh, please forgive me, sir. I had no idea that you are her father." Bystander, "I am not. I am her mother." This is the condition of the present day world. We think that this is freedom. But you cannot do that rich unless you have to observe and discipline. Whimsicality with that you cannot gain anything. So mystic worship gives a support to the mind. Average mind likes to have support. When you say you meditate, you are left with nothing. You have no support there. The support of sound, support of sight, these are, with the supports, mind is raised. After that, you can take these supports up, or they fall by themselves. As Ramakrishna says that formal practices, we should not rebel. If you go to a church, they need to sit down in this way, kneel down. These have very meaningful purposes. When you have done it, then you enter into the real content. Finally comes japa, another important practice. It is there in all systems, telling a bead, counting on finger, a concentrated prayer or a word. Highly efficacious and least reactive for invoking the mind. Japa uses a sacred word. Word has power. If I repeat a word consistently, it will create reaction in you. And you repeat it. The television people use this technique. They repeat the same thing again and again. That thing makes a mark on your mind, whether you like it or not. And once it has a made mark, you can't get away. You have to live with it and see it. And then you will have a liking. Anything that makes a mark in your mind, you develop a liking for it. It is concentration of will. When you repeat a word, it creates vibration. When you stop repeating, the vibrations go to the molecular stage. Let us say you repeat, say, a rock and roll mantra with beats. You clap your hand. It creates a resonance. Stops. But that resonance does not stop altogether. It goes to the molecular stage, remains submerged. Next time when you hear that same rock and roll, the whole resonance again comes to the surface. So therefore, this is used here in the same way, a support for the mind. Also, it is a control over the speech. Now, japa has called 3 types of repetition: loud, semi-verbal, mental. Vachika, upangshu, and manas. 3 kinds. Then there is a called likhita japa. A sacred word, you take a piece of paper, say, I'll write 5,000 times. this. Or write on sand or earth. That is one of the practices. Likhita. Then called ajopajop, with breath. Each time you breathe, you are repeating, making it part of the breath. It becomes continuous. Part of the mind continues to do all the time. So likhita ajopa, it leads to meditation. One who has succeeded in this, he alone can practice continence and moral purity. Without that, it is not possible. So one must be adept and steady in this. Its effect is infallible. Even if you say 10 days ago or 10 years ago you repeated, it will remain there. After that, again you do, you are reinforcing the previous practices. They will all come to the surface. This leads to kumbha, Sri Ramakrishna says. That is suspension of breath. What? Through pranayama is achieved. That is done here. Then, japa where ends, meditation takes over. A concentrated prayer is consistent repeating, giving a support. At one stage, you will not be aware, meditation will take over. It has stopped. You are not aware of it. It leads to meditation. It is difficult to reach directly. Now this pranayama, mystic worship, repetition of a concentrated prayer, these are also called contingency plans. When mind cannot dwell on the high plane, it comes to the next higher. If you do not prepare these stages and platforms beforehand, you are in utter danger. It is like you go up to the 10th floor by building a platform, first floor, second floor, third floor. If any time you fall down from the upper 10th floor, you will not fall on the ground. You will fall to the next. These are called supporting practices. Supporting platforms does not lead you headlong fall, where you can lose your life. So therefore, from below, as one goes, it builds a platform, reaches there, next he goes to the next platform. Question comes finally, how much for whom? Here comes the necessity of a guide. We often do not know what is our problem. By reading a book of pharmacy, you cannot be a doctor. Even studying in the medical school, you cannot be a doctor. You have to be an internist. You have to do residency. Sometimes we think the problem is due to the environment. A patient came to a doctor. Doctor said, your husband must have absolute rest and quiet. And here are some sleeping pills. Wife, when must I give them to him? Doctor, they are for you. So therefore, how much for whom? We need a doctor. If this journey is a flight, you must prepare a flight plan. The tower will advise you the weather condition, your engine capacity, your fuel, your training. You are capable of flying a Cessna or a 747. Then he will give you a flight plan. Earlier in the first day I said, we are grounded. We like to go into the altitude. Purpose is to gain altitude and remain there. But for that, I must cut my coat according to my cloth. So the flight plan, when it is done, it's contingency plans that when tornado comes, what you will do. When you meet with the air pocket, when you do. When engine fails, what you will do. These are all individual prescriptions. So therefore, there, as they need a connection with the tower, training, and individual judgment, here also individual prescriptions are necessary. But methods employed basically the same. A person who is not established that much on purity, probably for that person pranayama would be given 5% or 2%. Repetition of telling sacred words through rosary would be emphasized more. Or for some, the mystical worship aspect would be emphasized more, depending upon the individual gifts and liabilities of an individual seeker. These flight plans and routes are selected. The goal is to reach the destination and reach an altitude. For that, individual guidance is necessary, so is the individual practice. Thank you. Om Jananing Saradang Deving Ramakrishnan Jagatgurum Padapadmitayo Sritva Pranamami Muhur Muhur. We bow down to Mother Sarada and the great Master Sri Ramakrishna. We take refuge at their feet and bow down to them over and over again. Om, peace, peace be unto us and to all living beings.